It's a little more observational. I'm pretty much a clean comedian, maybe PG-13 for some things. I don't get into too much like, blue material. Just one, that's more shock, and two, I'm in my 50s. No one wants to hear me say that stuff. It ends up being a little creepy, there's comedians who do it, and you're like, dude, it just sounds creepy when it comes from, older guys. Just don't do it. You know what I mean?
Listen to the vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very privileged to have Mr. Joel Klein here with me today. He is a comedian and also a producer of, as your Twitter says, some shows you may know and some you may not.
That is true.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like you said, I'm a game show producer. Some you've heard of, most you haven't, because I've done a lot of pilots of shows that never made it to air, and I get brought in a lot of times to help with shows. But shows I did do that, that, like Fear Factor, Family Feud. I worked on Hollywood Squares. I worked on Love Connection. Tons and tons of game shows. I worked at Game Show Network for a while, so my whole career was in game shows. But also, like I said, a lot of pilots that never saw the light of day.
Was it Chuck how do you say his name? Chuck Worthy?
Worley.
Yeah.
No, I can't even say it. It wasn't his. No, it was one that came later on that we did. That was that we did for a little bit, but never really caught on. That version.
I know everybody knows Fear Factor. Was that Joe Rogan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't watch that, but
well, it's been nice talking with you.
Yeah.
So it's
see you later then. No.
Yeah.
I've watched most of those though. But not
nice. Yeah, I mean, it was weird. I didn't set out to work in game shows when I moved out to Los Angeles. I grew up in the East Coast, always wanted to work in TV. Moved out to LA, ended up getting a job as a production assistant on a game show. And one thing led to another. You just keep getting hired by those people you work with. They go on to another show, they hire you, next thing you know, I have a career in game shows. And like I said, it's not what I set out to do, but as a few people have said to me, I have this weird game gene where I just understand game shows because they're more complicated than you think, because you have to make them very simple.
Mm-hmm.
So that way people can tune in, they get the game right away, they know what's happening. So you want a simple game, but you also want it to be interesting and fun. But so they're more complicated than you think to put together, so they come across being very nice and simple. And so I ended up just having this like game gene where people just kept hiring me, going, hey, can you help us create this game? Can you help us write the Bible? The Bible is the show rules. If you were to have a baseball rule book, the Bible is the show rules, how it's all done and put together. And so I just, next thing I know, I'm like, wow, I've been out here 10, 15 years and this is what I do. I'm a game show maven. So that's what, so I kind of, like I said, I fell into it, but loved it. I mean, doing game shows is a lot of fun.
Have you tried to get into the reality TV stuff?
Well, I mean, a lot of what I did is now called reality competition when they're the big shows. Like people, like, to me, Fear Factor is a game show.
Right.
But the industry likes to call it reality game because we try to get a little bit more into the people's lives, a little bit more documentary. I've done some type of what we would call docu-follows, which are where you would be a reality show where you follow someone around, where those type of things. And I've done some of those because my original background in graduate school was I focused on documentary, believe it or not. And when I was in graduate school, I did a documentary about the SPCA in Syracuse, and it went on to win a college Emmy that year. So I mean, I was like all documentary, but back then, it was hard to make a living in documentaries. It was just not the way it is now with like so many different streaming services and things like that for documentaries. So I when I moved out to LA, it wasn't so much looking for documentary work, it was looking for TV work. And then what's interesting is as the game show genre kind of evolved, it kind of what it did is it took elements of documentary and kind of threw them together, which made, that's why I think one was so perfect for me, because it took my documentary background, my game gene, and threw them together. Because, people wanted a little bit more than just straight game. So they wanted to know more about the people's lives. They wanted to get into them. They wanted to get to know them better. So that was that documentary moment. But then, documentaries are like, some people are like, sit and watch documentaries. So you throw game element into it. And now you've got the two worlds colliding, and it makes for a much better program, because it's got a little bit of both, that type of stuff. So, so I did do like some reality type stuff, but more like the competition things.
See, I'm really into documentaries, especially like the old musical groups and stuff.
Oh, I love those. Yeah.
Man, I'm really into like Frank Zappa, and they had a good one on about Frank Zappa and the Mothers. And then
Nice.
like when you're on Amazon and they give you those suggestions, the next thing I know, I'm watching Harry Nilsson and Creedence Clearwater Revival, and it's just a rabbit hole.
I end up doing that too. I love watching, of course, I'm gonna blank on all the names now, but there was a great one that Johnny Depp did about Shane McGowan from the Pogues, which I love the Pogues. So that was like a really good one. And then there's one great one. They did 2 or 3 of them. And it was about punk in Los Angeles and things like that. It was a really good. And so I watched those, because I love watching the music ones too. And like the Laurel Canyon one, which was great. I don't know if you saw that one.
No, I didn't see that one.
It was all about the bands that all lived like on Laurel Canyon.
Yeah, actually, I did see that one.
So really cool and fun. That was a good one.
Wasn't David Crosby on that one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there was that series that Epic did on punk. It was like 6 episodes or something like that just followed, punk, stuff like that. I always like those. I find those like the really interesting ones about the punk bands. And of course, you must have watched Get Back.
Oh yeah, watch that.
That was crazy.
Did you see that one with Val Kilmer? It was him, I think, with the camera and his son, and did the whole documentary on him.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, it's sad, man. It's sad. You see a guy go from, a Hollywood hunk to what he is now, and I feel so bad for him. I think he's got a cancer or something along that line. Yeah. Speaking of reality TV, I don't think people realize how much really goes into getting those even started. We got the chance to do a TV show, and it was a year and a half after we even did the initial interview before we started filming. We went around like 3 days straight with this microphone attached and everything, and people following us around and whatnot. And then it took about almost 8 months later for us to tell us, well, we decided to go a different direction.
Yeah, well, that's why at the very beginning when I said I did a lot of pilots, it didn't see the light of air. That's the nature of the business. And reality is really difficult to sell because there's so many different things that have to come into play to get people to be interested in like what it's going to be. A lot of times like people will be like, this I'm quirky, so it'd be a good thing. Well, there's more to it than that. And and so I always get myself into weird situations. Well, it's more than that. There's so many different things you have to get into when you're trying to develop a reality show, because you have to find, there's got to be story, there's got to be character, there's got to be a connection with it, with the viewer. You have to look at why is it different to be doing it with this person than with someone else, and it's just, and everything has to line up. It all has to line up perfectly for it all to happen. I've done so many shows that you're like, wow, this is a great show, and then it doesn't get picked up. And there's other times you do a show and you're like, we didn't really have it, And then the network's like, that's the one we love, let's do it. And you're like, okay, you know what I mean? Because you never know what they're gonna see on any given day and say, yeah, that's, because a show that they don't want today, they may want tomorrow because it fills a need that showed up. You know what I mean? So and things keep changing what their needs are. So you can be working on one thing and next thing you know, it's like, no, we don't want that. We want it to go the opposite way. And you're like, what? And they're like, oh, I get it, because things changed.
Yeah, we were building bars in people's homes and having themes to them. And the one we were working on the pilot, these people had won a tailgate of the year or whatever. Well, anyway, to make a long story short, we did all that recording, but they wanted us to play it straight and not be the goofballs that we normally are. I told my buddy, this is not going to work. And sure enough, when the time came, they said, no, we changed our minds. I knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, I was once, we did a pilot, similar type thing. It was a company, they were out of New York State, upstate New York, and they custom built Airstreams, really cool things. They would take Airstreams and just gut it and then custom build it to what you wanted stuff. And everything from, they had, just billionaires would come to them and say, they want this, to stores who were like wanting to create things, and they built all these crazy things. We went and we shot and it looked great, and they were characters, because it was up in upstate New York, and it was just nuts and looked great, and network loved it, started talking about going and doing some episodes. And then the guy who was at the network, who was our champion for it, he got fired, and next our project's dead.
Oh man.
Because that's the other thing, because the guy who the executive is there, who is championing you, once they're gone, no one's going to be champion for your show anymore, because they want whoever's taking their place wants their show in there, because they all want to be the person who found the show. So I mean, I've had that happen a few times, where you're going out and doing things. I was doing another thing. We were doing a show, shot a pilot for it's about minor league baseball. It was really cool. I had some great access. I had made a deal with the Dodgers, so I had access to one of their minor league teams doing stuff. Had great stories, looked really good. But the network we were pitching it to wanted me to script some stuff. And I don't come from the whole scripting thing. I'm like, there's plenty of good stories, or we don't need to script it. And then they were asking for certain things that take place. And I'm like, one, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to fake stories. I'm like, look, if this player does this stuff outside, we'll catch it. Don't worry about it. I come from documentary. We'll find it. But at the same time, I mean, I had a deal with the Dodgers, so it was, they weren't going to let us just going fake stories and ruin guys' careers. You know what I mean? Like, and do things. If this guy does PEDs, or if he does something else, don't worry, we'll cover it, we'll get it. But we're not going to create a story and mess with these guys' careers. This wasn't like, so, and I was like, no one. I was the first person I would actually have a real deal with, like, Major League Baseball team, to deal with one of their minor league teams. And it took me a long time to get the Dodgers to trust me, like, that I wasn't going to mess around with it, because they're like, this is an investment, these players.
Right.
These guys may eventually be coming, make it to the, to the major league team. And then when the network was like, no, you gotta do this, I was like, I can't do that. So I had to walk away from the project, because I'm like, one, in good conscience, I couldn't do it. And two, I couldn't do it because I had to deal with the Dodgers. They weren't going to let me do it. So all kinds of things. I mean, I had a show one time on a network. It was started off weak in the ratings, but as the weeks went on, we started building audience, getting better. And the head of programming, she got fired, and new head of programming came in. He called me into his office, said, love your show, looks fantastic, the numbers are just getting better and better, but I'm going to cancel it. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, I can't have that show become a hit, because he didn't greenlit it. It was greenlit by the other president. He goes, if I have her show become a hit, then they're like, why did they get rid of her? And put me in. He goes, so I have to do it. And he goes, but I love you as a producer and stuff. He goes, you did a great job. He goes, I'm going to give you another show. So we'll do another show with you. We're just not going to do that one. And I'm like, but I wanted to do that show. It was like, that show was fun. It was like, becoming, getting good numbers, but it was like, nah, time to. So I mean, you never know what's going to get you canceled or not even started. It's just so many things come into play. Like sometimes not even doesn't even make if it's the show's good or bad. It's something else.
Oh yeah. Well, they had buddies that were on Ghost Hunters, and they were doing real good, but because of numbers and whatnot, their budget, they cut it. They
Yeah.
cut a couple of really good rated shows just for budgetary reasons, and that just sucked.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
are you focusing more on your comedy now, or
Right now, that's what I'm focusing. I'm focusing on my stand-up and starting to do a little bit of acting because a few people told me I should do some of that because they saw my stand-up, and there are, a couple of casting directors like, oh, your stand-up routine translates very well, your character. So right now I'm just kind of focusing on that. I mean, I'll do some consulting for some game shows. I'll get called up and say, hey, can you come and do a couple weeks of consulting work, help us get this show figured out, and I'll do that. But 100% mostly is focusing on stand-up right now, which is kind of crazy. I never thought, I mean, it was a dream of mine to always do stand-up when I was little, but I never told anybody because I was too shy. And it's just crazy that that's what I'm doing now, is like, mostly it's focusing on my stand-up.
yeah, I seen you had a few dates booked at some clubs, and it's like kind of curious of what your comedy was kind of based around.
It's a little more observational. I'm pretty much a clean comedian, maybe PG-13 for some things. I don't get into too much like blue material. Just one, that's more shock, and two, I'm in my 50s. No one wants to hear me say that stuff. It ends up being a little creepy. I mean, there's comedians who do it, and you're like, dude, it just sounds creepy when it comes from older guys. Just don't do it. You know what I mean? And then I like I said, mostly clean. I'll talk about my life growing up. I'll talk a little bit about like television. I'll talk about things going on, observational things, just stuff like that. I don't really get into politics. I will a little bit here and there. I'll make a little comment. Well, I won't focus on it. I'll just throw a little subtle comment in, move on. You know what I mean? And because I'm not a known comedian, so as if I were to do certain things politically or something like that, you automatically gonna alienate half the room.
That's right.
Or depending where you're at. I mean, yeah, and if you're not alienating half the room, then you're just preaching to the choir. You know what I mean? And so it's, if I was a known comedian, like when Bill Maher or Lewis Black or some of the comedians who are much more political, Dave Chappelle, who you're going to see when you buy a ticket. So, but when someone walks into a comedy club and I get up there, they don't know me. So I'm not going to say stuff that's going to, offend them or whatever. And do stuff, but like I said, I'll do one or two. And, I'm a big far left liberal, and I was doing a joke in a very Republican area. I made my one little joke. It was funny. And it was great because the audience loved it. Even the far right, they loved the joke. They thought it was funny. And this one guy yelled out, he goes, I can't believe you said that joke here. I'll walk you to your car to make sure you're okay. And it was just, because it was like I don't harp on it. You know what I mean? So I did like one joke, moved on, and it was just a subtle one. And it was more about me. And then like kind of like made the comment and then moved on. And so they were like, yeah, that's, it was funny because like, it's not like if I do anything, it's not to be preachy. It's not to like convince anybody anything. It's not to do anything. It was just like a fun joke and then moving on. And like I said, even though it was, coming from a left perspective, people who were on the right laughed at it. You know what I mean? It didn't offend anybody. It was like they laughed too. So it was like, it was okay. You know what I mean? Because I moved on. So I think it's when you start, I've seen comedians just want to harp. And then when they see that they have that other audience that they're alienating, then they double down and want to go after them. It's like, you're there to entertain. Why are you doing that?
Yeah.
I may not agree with everybody, but they're here to see me tell jokes, entertain them. So whether we disagree or not on politics, it's like, but you're here to see me. So, I owe you the same respect back to sit there and try to entertain you, not sit there and try to insult you, so there's no reason to do that. Because, if someone's, it's like when I've seen comedians, like, let's say it's a small crowd. They'll start complaining about the crowd being small. Well, it's like, why are you complaining? These people, they're the ones who showed up,
Mhm.
You should be thankful. Hey, you know what? I know it's a small crowd, but I'm still going to give you the best show you've ever seen, and we're going to have fun, But instead, they start complaining about it. Well, it's like, these aren't the people to complain to. They're the ones who showed up. So it's the same type of thing. It's like, why? Even these people are here to laugh at you and have a good time. So don't piss them off. Don't anger them. Don't insult them. No reason to.
Yeah, that's been a big problem with entertainment, whether it be sports or in the movies, on TV shows. They get political, and then you lose that opposite
Yeah, I
viewpoint.
mean,
The people on the opposite side.
yeah, it's there's like I said, there's times and places for things, and you know, if I'm going to do a show, it's supposed to be political, or people know I'm going to do political, then I know they're coming to hear like my jokes for it.
Hmm.
Then I can do whatever I want. You know what I mean? But if you don't know me, which 98% of the people showing up to see a show don't, I'm new to the whole stand-up thing. They don't know who I am doing it. So it's like, why, they paid money to come to the show. Why sit there and, if I'm established and I become, I don't think I ever will become a political comedian, just because for a lot of reasons. I mean, not even for the politics of it. It's just you're constantly having the right stuff, and you know what I mean. It's focused too much on the day and date of stuff, and then you have to write new stuff, and it's like, so instead of really honing your act, you're busy trying to keep it up to date. So, but it's like, when I get known, maybe I can do some stuff. But it's like there's no reason to. There's no reason to.
Well, I've had people on the show with opposite viewpoints from me, and they don't shove their beliefs in my face, and we get along just fine. I like to keep it that way.
Yeah, I mean, there's no like. I have lots of a lot of friends. We never talk. Um, there's certain things just don't. I mean, there's no reason to get into. But things have changed that way. It's everybody wants to fight. So it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
that's another thing.
everybody wants to argue and fight. That's the worst thing about the internet. Everybody's a tough guy on the internet. They can all write and say whatever they want because they're sitting at home, and stuff you would never say in public or to someone, but at home you'll sit on your computer and type it and be all tough. It's like the worst thing about the internet.
Oh man, I actually got into an argument with a guy, and then afterwards I thought, what did that prove? What was? I mean, it's not gaining anything. I mean, he's not going to agree with me no matter if I give him facts or not.
Yeah.
So what's the point? And that's not what I'm about anyway. I'm trying to bring people together, not get into an argument.
That's what I said. Like so I do my comedy, I stay away from politics because there's just no reason, like I said, for me to do it. And we're all there. Let's have a good time. Let's just laugh, and I'm gonna make some observations about things that we're all gonna laugh at. I'm gonna tell you jokes and things that are funny, and we'll have a good time. And that's what we do. And then the show's over. You come to me and tell me you had a good time, and I'm like, great, come to another show. You know what I mean? And so it's about having fun and having a nice night out.
And I don't want to sound like a prude, because when I was a kid, I used to go over to my cousin's house, and he'd sneak out the record of Eddie Murphy or Richard Pryor or something along that line. So you get all the cuss words, and we thought that was really cool. But the older I get, and I have grandkids now, I like to find as much clean stuff as possible so I can not be embarrassed when they walk in the room, or I can sit down and watch it with them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I love watching, the old Eddie Murphy stuff. I mean, that's some of the best stand-up. It's really, really good. And I don't mind comedians who are blue material and do things, but I think a certain comedian has to do it to pull it off.
Mm-hmm.
And I think being, in my 50s, male, no one wants to hear it because it comes across creepy. You know what I mean? It's like, they'd rather hear me say other things. You know what I mean? And it's interesting is I do really well with college audiences. And because I am clean, so they're like, oh, he's not going to say anything offensive. I sit there and I talk about my kids growing up. I talk about me growing up. I talk about working in television. I talk about like just weird things going on, whatever. And they like it because there's no preachiness to it. There's no talking down to them. I never make jokes about millennials and all this other stuff. I hate when comedians start like attacking millennials. It's like, it's like, so I don't do any of that. It's more like I just, do it. And I always have college students come to me after a show and they're like, oh, we really, really like your stuff. And I'm like, oh, thanks, because like they go, cause it's just fun. And, some of the jokes, a little bit more wordplay, which is a little bit more on the clever sides, makes them think a little bit. And it's just, it's nice because then you don't need to do it. And when you work clean, you can play any audience, like you said,
That's right.
the grandfather can come in, the grandkids can come in, college kids can be there, parents can be there. I mean, everybody can sit there and have a good time. Everybody can go to the show. And me being the struggling comedian I am, I need all the audience I can get. So it's I don't need to start narrowing my audience down.
Working in construction as long as I did, you pick up every word in the book. And I used to drop the F-bomb all the time when I was talking. And I got to a point, especially after the grandkids were born, that the F word makes me cringe now. And I don't like anybody saying it around me. So I want to make an example for my kids too, or my grandkids.
Yeah.
And if I can watch comedy that's clean, I win both ways, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? From a stand-up, from being the comedian, making someone laugh with a clean joke is so much more satisfying. When I'm on stage and I say like a clean joke and the audience just a big laugh, it's just, yeah, that's great. Because a lot of times when you work the blue material, you swear, you do things, it's more the shock value. A lot of times you'll see comedians, they'll just start throwing the F-bombs around because they know the audience will react to it.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times that's out of desperation. And it's like, oh, I need, because any reaction is better than no reaction, So but when you work clean, and if you go and you write a nice, clean, clever joke and the audience laughs, I love that,
And my youngest grandson lives here with us, and he's going to be 3 in January. And so he picks up on everything. He's a little mockingbird.
Mm.
And I caught him this morning because, like I say, I try not to cuss, and he was going, gosh, dang it, just like me. He says, what the heck? Like, oh, my, glad he doesn't start saying the other words.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So do you have a joke that maybe works good no matter where you're at? That's like one of your favorites?
A lot of it, especially like in stand-up, you try to write so that way they flow into the next one. Mm-hmm. So that way it builds a momentum and it sounds like a conversation. So, unlike writing, like joke book jokes, where each one can just be by itself, which I have written some stuff like that. I don't do those as much, because I try to, I start talking about, I don't know, just, well, like this new one just happened recently. In this joke, and I'll open with this joke a lot of times, where I just walk out and the way I'm dressed and the audience will look at me, and obviously me being the older guy walking out, usually in the lineup, I'll just like let the audience take it in and I'll go, obviously you can tell I'm a hipster. And then the audience will react a bit and I'll go, and I say that because my doctor just told me I have an arthritic hip. And she told me no more running and no more doing anything with impact. And I said, that won't be a problem. I've lived my whole life without having any impact. So I open with that. Lately, I've been opening with that just because, you walk out and, it's almost like addressing the elephant in the room. Like, okay, I'm older. I'm not old, I'm in my 50s. So it's like, but, but when I walk out on, some of these shows where all the comedians are in their 20s, I like to at least address it. You know what I mean? Just things, or I'll say something like, oh, obviously I'm tonight's chaperone, so if it's a really young lineup and stuff. So, I mean, I'll address that, but then I'll kind of get into, well, I'm a television producer. And then I'll say that line that, that I have on my Instagram, it's like, I produce game shows. Some you heard of, most you haven't. And then I go into a couple of stories about that. And then I'll talk about, depending on the crowd and how much time I'm doing, growing up, where I grew up in a small town in New York State, and then just like what it was like growing up in the 70s, just the weird things, and then what school was like, you know what I mean? And then I kind of get into like dating and then getting married and having kids, so like I kind of arc, my
Right.
set. So if I'm doing 45 minutes, obviously you're getting all this stuff. If I'm doing 20 minutes, you get the same arc, but now it's like these 5 jokes, these 5 bits.
Right.
And if it's a 10-minute set, you're getting these 3 bits, but almost still the same arc, and if it's a 5-minute set, it's a little bit more just quicker, getting into like just trying to be a little bit real quick, like one thing here, one thing here, one thing there, and then done. So it's so that's kind of like how my jokes kind of work.
Do you have those people in your life that try to give you jokes to use up on stage?
Occasionally I do. The people will say, oh, you should do this, and it's like, yeah, well, it's I don't get that as much because most of my friends are all either comedians or work in television, so they get it. But every now and then I'll go back to my hometown and they'll be like, you should tell that story about the time we went to the pond. And I'm like, only you and I think that story is funny about us going to the pond. That's not really going to be a story I can tell like on stage where the audience is like, oh yeah, that's great. It's gonna, a lot of times people don't realize it's funny because it's the two of you. It's not funny because it's a good joke.
Well, most of my audience, I try to address doing something in life that makes you happy, not being stuck in the same old, and do something that gets you out of the funk that you're in. A lot of the folks, they have problems with depression, anxiety, things like that, and they don't know how to overcome. Is there been any things in your life that, you've had a huge hurdle that you had to get over, or something that's kind of held you back in a way?
Yes and no. Not to the extreme that like a lot of people have. So I don't want to like compare it to any, because I know I have some friends who've had like real trauma and stuff like this. So to sit there and try to put myself into the same group, I would never do that because I haven't nearly faced anything like people have. But I do have OCD, and a lot of people don't understand OCD. They think it's just the eccentric. I check the lock 13 times because I need to just do that and then move on. But there's more to it. There's actually a really dark stuff to it, and it's really weird because there's like the thoughts can take you all over the place, and they can and be extreme where the reason you have to check the lock exactly 13 times isn't so much of just being that. It's just that, well, if I don't, then I know a good friend of mine or somebody will get hit by a bus today and die. And it's not like a joke thing. It's a serious thing. Like, oh, I've done jokes about it. And it's like, I think that my, things that I do will have the butterfly effect and affect the world, where it's like, I can only use blue pens. Blue pens is my thing. And I know to a lot of people think that's just cool and eccentric, but to me, it's like, if I don't, then I've thrown a wrinkle into the world that somehow someone close to me or something like that will be hurt today because I did that one thing that changes everything. So it's a weird little spiral there. So that's like, it's a little bit different than what like you were asking about the thing. But the OCD can get in my way sometimes, because another thing that OCD does is that it can really make you not like yourself, because you don't trust that anybody else likes you. That you're always questioning friendships, you're always questioning relationships, because you're like, oh, does that person really like me or not? And it doesn't even make a difference who it is. It could be, but it's always there. So I live a lot of times like with that kind of paranoia, is like, well, this person really my friend or not really my friend? Even though this person can be my friend for 25 years and my best friend, I'll always be like, yeah, but are they really? You know what I mean? And it's always, and then, but I've had to, once I was diagnosed, like being told I had the OCD, and that it's only moderate. It's not like this horrible, debilitating thing where I can't leave the house or anything like that. But it's like once I started thinking where my mind will take me things, I'll be like, this is OCD. And then I can just almost start to go, okay, I can separate it because that's just my mind doing that. So I can forget it. You know what I mean? I can be like, okay, let that little worry go, but it's not real. And so I'm able to separate now and use that kind of like little coping thing and stuff like that. But going back to like kind of what you're saying, is anything ever really stopped me for things? A lot of it is just insecurity and doubting myself a lot of times and just being afraid to go do things. And which is weird because a lot of my friends are always like, they'll say to me, wow, they admire me because they're like, you'll do anything, you'll try anything. You know, they're like, the fact that I want to start doing stand-up. They're like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? And it's like, oh, you just want to do things. And it's like, you know, and I remember one time my daughter was a teenager, one of her friends was like, oh, your dad's so cool. He just tries things. He doesn't care. You know what I mean? And it's not like I'm a daredevil. It's not like I try, like, I'm going to go rock climbing. I mean, I'll never do any of that stuff, but I'm just saying, but there's something that I really want to go and try. It's like, why not? Why not go and try it? And it was like with stand-up. It was I was so shy, and I had been told so many times growing up from different teachers and things like that, that I never would amount to anything. I would never do anything. I was too dumb. I was too this or whatever. I never told anybody I wanted to do stand-up. It was a secret passion. And it wasn't until, oh God, how old was I? I can't remember how old it was, but it was, I started doing stand-up. We were living in Vermont at the time because we had moved back east for a while. We were living in Vermont. A comedy club opened up there. They did a class, stand-up class. You know, it was like 6 weeks, and at the end you got up and you did stand-up. And I went and signed up for it. And my wife's like, what? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I know you're really funny. She goes, but stand-up, you're gonna get up on a stage? She goes, I can't believe you're gonna do that because you're so, you know. And I'm like, it's always been a dream. I've always wanted to be a stand-up. And friends of mine who were stand-ups out here because of they were hosts for shows I did and things like that. They were like, look at one of two things will happen. You'll do it once, bucket list, you're done, or you'll become obsessed. And I became obsessed. And then it was just like, and then I started writing every day and trying to get up on stage as much as I could. And then, you know, about a year ago, my wife and I, we moved back to LA. So we're back living in LA. You know, we had lived here for a while and then we moved back east. Now we're back here. So now I'm just really just pursuing the stand-up thing. And I've always, I don't know. As I always tell people, if I'm not delusional about myself, no one else will be. So if I'm delusional enough to think I can go do stand-up, then I have to do it because no one else is going to come to me and say, hey, you should be a stand-up. Or if someone's like, you should go do this. I mean, no one's going to do it. I mean, not that they don't believe in you or any of that other stuff, but they have their own life to worry about. So it's like, you know what? It's, you know, whatever you think you want to try, you should just go and try. And it's like I said, I mean, if you're not going to be delusional about your own stuff, no one else will be. So here I am being delusional and telling everybody I'm a stand-up.
That your OCD, is that part of your biggest fear in life?
I've learned a lot to recognize it and move on. It was, like I said, I was only, was told I was only moderate. So like, I wouldn't, because I know people who have it, like, won't leave the house if certain things are not right because of that fear. To show you though where my mind will go, and this is like so trivial, and that's why I don't like to try to get into conversations with other people, because my stuff's so trivial compared to what other people really deal with this. So it's not like this is, but I remember putting on my clothes is really important, and I have a lot of the duplicates of the same clothes because I have to dress like every day is the same day. It's just a thing. I have multiples of the same type of t-shirts. I have multiples of the same hooded sweatshirt, you know, different colors, but it's got to be the same brand. It's got to be the same thing. You know what I mean? And it's just, I have multiples of the same pairs of jeans. And so when I get dressed, it's almost like I'm wearing the same clothes every day. You know, colors might change, but it's the exact same type of thing. And I remember one time doing a stand-up show and sat in my bedroom 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because I couldn't decide which, and I kept put one on, take it off, putting them on, take them off, which socks were the right socks for that show. And put on a pair of socks. I had to leave. I had to go down to go do a show. I was there and I had an okay set. It wasn't horrible. It wasn't great. It was fine. It did okay. but the whole time on stage, I kept going, this isn't going well. I wore the wrong socks. I have the sock. And I couldn't get out of my head. I just kept thinking about the socks. So here I am telling the jokes, and I'm like talking, and I was in that, but my mind was going, this isn't working because the socks are wrong. And I was just in that loop of, couldn't really do my job because I just was in the loop of, well, these are the wrong socks. And if I had the different socks, this would be different. And it was just, and like I said, I could be telling the joke, talking, but my mind would just be like spinning on that. And so like I said, it's so trivial when some people are really dealing with things. So I don't ever really want to act like, oh my God, this is horrible. But that's where I would get caught up with things,
Yeah.
and things are like, oh, that's ruined. Okay, this is ruined. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that it kind of does for me is it's very black and white. It's either so if something happens, like, oh, okay, well, the day's ruined now because that happened. You know what I mean? And it's like, it would have been a good day, but I put on the wrong shirt, and now this whole day is ruined. So we can't have fun, and I'm just in a horrible mood because I had the wrong. You know what I mean? Because my mind will be in that loop. But that's like the worst is that it'll just get me in that loop. But I've gotten a lot better with like dealing with it, where like I actually did one time do something like the sock thing by putting the wrong ones on, going, I'm going to do this show tonight with the wrong socks on, and it's going to be fine. And just did it. And the show was fine. And it was like, see, it's, you know what I mean? And that's, so a lot of times when these things start getting into this loop, I can almost step out of the loop now and go, see, that's just that loop. It's really not the socks. I don't need the socks to do the show. It's, you know what I mean? And so I start to do, I start to think, I love sports and things like that. And so I try to, before I go up on stage, try to get in my game face and do stuff. I'll do a little mantra in my head and go, okay, now I'm just getting ready. And then I just love getting up on that stage, because to me, it's like, I'm just going to take care of this room. I'm taking control of the room now. I'm going to have, you know what I mean? And so I get more into that now, you know what I mean? And that doesn't let me get into any thoughts of socks or blue pens or anything like that.
Well, my father and my grandmother, they both had mental illness, and I always worry that that's going to happen to me, that I'm losing my mind. And you talked about the socks and all that stuff. I thought just part of being a Libra was everything had to be balanced, so I had to walk over the cracks in the sidewalk equally,
Yeah,
each feet or each foot, and if my leg was touching the side of a chair, well, the other leg had to be touching the other side of the chair and all that. I just thought that was part of being Libra, but it almost sounds like I had the same problem.
yeah. That's definitely elements of it, and that's a lot of it. Yeah, where I would go through and it would be like certain things, and I would do that, and I remember reading one time, and I don't know what the thing is, but I would as a kid, like if I was drawing or something and then didn't like it and crumbled it up and ripped the paper and threw it out, I would then get really, really sad that I hurt the paper and ripped it up and did that. And then it would almost make me like cry.
Oh, wow.
And stuff. And then I ended up reading one time that actually was something related like to OCD and stuff like that. And I never really followed up on learning more about that, about what that was. But there was definitely like, it would be like, where it would be, it's just, so if I had a notebook, and I still have this problem now, I have horrible handwriting, and I will buy like, again, when you're doing stand-up, you have to write all the time. So I have a lot of these notebooks, and I like, again, the same kind of notebook. I found this great notebook that is perfect size, and you're writing it. But because my handwriting is horrible, it makes me really upset that it looks. And so a lot of times I don't use the notebook because I don't want to ruin the notebook that my handwriting is in.
Oh, wow.
So I'll not write. And then if I do start to write, and then if I have to make a mistake, then it's like, oh, I ruined the notebook. And so a lot of times I won't use the notebook then. And so I don't want to touch things because I don't want to ruin it. So you get caught up in this whole, I don't know if it's that type of stuff. And so I've been working with the note, so I'll use the notebooks, but yeah, and it's weird, you know what I mean? Where I'm like, okay, and I'm getting past it and working with it, but it's a lot of like, yeah, things like that will happen where like, someone gave me a really nice, my daughter once gave me a really nice moleskin notebook. I won't use it because I don't want to ruin it with my handwriting. And, if I make a mistake in it, then it's ruined. You know what I mean? And it's like, and she's like, no, it's for you to write and cross things out. And she got one that has no lines. So that way she goes, that way you can write any direction you want and draw and do things. It's like, and it's like, yeah, but then I'll ruin it. And it's like, and so it's still sitting, still in its cellophane wrapper on the shelf because I won't break that one open just because I don't want to ruin it.
It's funny you say that because I have one just like that up in the cabinet. My daughter gave it to me, but it has a picture of my two grandsons on it. And I can't write on it because
Yeah,
like you said, I'm going to ruin it and I don't want
yeah,
to ruin it.
yeah. And so that's why I'll buy doubles of all kinds of things. I love hot sauce. When I buy hot sauce, I'll buy two of them. One I'll use, but one so that way I can keep a nice good bottle. That way I have a good bottle. You know what I mean? It's just it's all about making sure that things don't get ruined. It's so I get caught up in that. That's one of the problems that I'll have where I get caught up in things.
That's
And if I
wild.
write something, it's like I get really upset if it's not written neatly. And I found these 3x5 cards, which are great, but they're vertical, not horizontal, which is perfect for me to write just like set list notes, down, just because it goes vertical as opposed to the way the lines are. And so at night when I go to do a show, I'll write out my set list on that and just know what I want to go and do. But I could easily end up doing it 2, 3, 4 times because nope, this one doesn't look right, and then throw it out, even though it's fine. You know what I mean? It's just for me to look at, not for anybody else to look at. It's not like giving it to someone going, here, you need to be able to, it's just for me. But I'll be like, no, I didn't cross that T right, so this one's ruined. I gotta need it and throw it out, go get a different one and write it again. So
Oh, that sounds so familiar. That's like I'm very particular about my collectibles. They all have to be sitting a special way on the shelf.
mhm.
And if one of them's out of place, I feel like I'm disrespecting it compared to the other ones.
Yeah,
That's so weird. I thought I was the only one like that.
no, it's disrespecting that's a perfect word. That's a really good word for it because that's what it is with me. Where if I do something, it's like, oh, that's a perfect description, the disrespect, because that's totally how I look at things, is that I ruined it. And it's like, and it's disrespectful. And that's like going back to that piece of paper. I still remember times of, ripping up a paper because I didn't like it. And then seriously lying in my bed crying because I ripped the paper up because I hurt that paper and, and treated that paper badly. And that's a perfect way to describe it, the disrespect of it. It's like if things aren't in the right spot, it's like, because like people will say to me, oh, I'm OCD. I like to have all my pencils all sharpened at the same time. I'm like, well, that's not OCD. That's just being anal. Unless you're like, if I don't have sharp pencils, my cousin's going to get run over by a bus today. And then you have that fear, then yeah. But if you're just like, I like sharp pencils, that's just being, anal, and which is fine. And there's nothing wrong with it, but just don't start. I hate when people start going, oh, I'm OCD because, I like everything neat. It's like, no, you like things neat. There's a big, it's what comes behind those thoughts. And that's what starts to annoy me because people just throw it around and it's like, you don't understand the dark stuff that comes with it. And for you just to kind of joke around, oh, I'm OCD because I like, all my hangers facing the right way. Well, it's like, we all like our hangers facing the right way. That's just being, neat and anal, you know what I mean? And making things look nice. It's not OCD. So,
I have to have my peanut butter on the right side of the bread and the jelly on the right side of the bread.
okay, that's crazy.
No, but seriously, my wife
Yeah,
does have OCD, and I see how it takes her to dark places
yeah,
sometimes.
yeah. It could be really dark. And it's in, you hit that spiral and it could be like, it could take you like thoughts and stuff that are just horrible, you know what I mean? And you're just like, and So a lot of times when, when you see people doing this, like, oh, I'm going to check this, or I have to touch this, or I have to have this blue pen. It's like, look, that's almost becoming like, I do a joke. I don't do it all the time, but I do a joke about OCD, and I use a blue pen because if I don't, it's gonna have the butterfly effect, so basically I'm a superhero. I'm saving the world one big blue pen at a time. And I go on, it's a longer bit, but I talk about how me doing this OCD stuff is basically keeping the world in order. So you're welcome, so it's like.
Yeah. Well, do you have any new projects coming up?
Just the stand up right now. I have every now and then, like I said, I get called about some game shows, and people are like, hey, do you have any ideas for some new game shows? I have a couple ideas I'm kind of messing around with, but maybe the pitch. But otherwise it's just focusing on the stand up. I'm trying to write more, trying to change my the type of joke I do, and moving away. I do a lot of wordplay and stuff like that. I'm trying to move a little bit more towards, I don't know, a little bit more relating more to my persona. So I'm just, trying to work on some material that way, writing some new material. And then, so yeah, nothing really new, except I said, just trying to get on the shows. I'm trying to get on the road, starting to reach out to clubs and trying to get booked more on the road. I've done some shows back east, done shows out here, a couple festivals and stuff around the country, but now I'd love to go do like a little kind of like mini tour and go hit like, a couple cities and do some clubs and stuff. So I'm starting to try to figure out how to go do that.
Well, if you need material, just call me. I'm the funniest guy I know.
All right, cool. I like it. Just don't tell me jokes about the time we went to the pond. That one's not gonna.
Dang, that was the first one I was gonna tell. So when's your next gig, and where is it?
I have, let's see, I have nothing the rest of this month, but then in November I have I'm at Flappers Club in Burbank. I have a couple shows there. I just booked a couple other shows that are down also in Southern California. And I forgetting the names of, they're like at venues, they're not clubs. They're at some like shows that a producer puts on at different venues. So I have a couple of shows coming up in November around Southern California. And like I said, trying to start to reach out to some other places. So I'm trying to build something for after the first of the year to try to go and start traveling around. So right now I'm kind of doing that, trying to reach out to places and then, yeah. And Flappers is kind of like my home club. I do a lot of shows at Flappers. So,
okay.
So I have a few coming up there.
Well, let me know if you make it to Austin.
That's so funny. Someone just asked me to do a show in Austin, and I'm trying to decide if I want to come down to it. I'm seeing if I can get booked in some other shows. There's one, what was the date? It was in November. He just sent me a thing the other day saying, hey, do you want to go do Austin? And I was just going to start reaching out to some Austin places this week to see if I could book some other dates around that one and make it worthwhile to come down.
Oh, that'd be awesome. We'll come see you.
So all right. So I will be in Austin at some point. If it's not in November, I will be coming down eventually. So that is a place I want to go.
Do you have a website?
I'm in my 50s. I don't have a website.
You don't have a website?
I know. I need to get one. Look, I'm on Instagram, and it's like even that's a chore for me to get that done and stuff like that. I'm just, yeah. Part of it is that whole OCD perfection thing, as I'm always afraid to put things up because I want it to be perfect. And if it's not perfect, I don't want to put it up. So I get caught in that loop of like so I don't really do Twitter much because I don't do tweets because I'm like worried that that joke isn't the perfect joke to put out and stuff. So that's part of the problem, is getting the website going. Is like, is it going to be perfect? Is it going to have everything? And so that's, tying everything in. But I do Instagram, and people want to follow me. It's the Joel Klein, and it's I just basically post pictures of my dog and when my shows. So
you're on Facebook.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook. I do a lot of stuff like on Facebook because again, I'm in my 50s, so I'm on Facebook a lot. I don't really do much, I try to keep in touch with some friends, through it, there's a way of doing that with some people, but I always talk about Facebook's great. You get to reconnect with people you haven't spoken to in 30 and 40 years, have one or two online conversation with them and realize there's a reason why I didn't keep in touch with that person.
Right. Thank you so much for
Thank you
coming
for
on the
having me.
show,
This was a
man.
lot of fun.
And you're always welcome to come back.
Oh, this was great. I definitely will. This will be fun. And then I will definitely let you know if I end up being able to get a chance to come down to Austin.
All right. Well, I want once again, thank you. Thank everyone out there. If you are new to the channel, I appreciate you stopping by, and I hope you'll come back. Hit that subscribe button. To all my followers out there, my regulars, it's because of you I get to do this. So until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, and on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network